I will start with personal experience. I wanted to see my cousin again after 20 years. She lived with some guy. About my relatives were talking only the most beautiful things. How nice he is, how he supports her, he was a little shy, private, but generous. They also said how rude my cousin was toward him, how she humiliates and molests, but he forgives her everything because he loves her very much. When me and my cousin have finally met, we hugged and kissed, a little more intimate and longer because we haven't seen each other for a long time. Everything was in front of his eyes, but he wasn't reacted at all. He looked somehow through us with a meaningless face. When we were done with greetings, I stood and waited for her to introduce me to his boyfriend or friend, whatever. However, that did not happen, and he remained standing in his place, showing no intention of moving. I had no choice. I didn't want to pretend that he doesn't exist, so I approached him by myself. I gave him my hand and tried to be friendly as much as I could with him. I asked him different questions, but I didn't get a precise answer to any of them. Eventually, I understood that he doesn't want me to know anything about him, on the basis of which I could evaluate him as a human being. My cousin ignored me. My cousin ignored him all the time. She turned her back and never mentioned him again in our private conversation that followed. I didn't want to interfere in her private matters, so we talked about other topics. He chatted with the rest of the relatives without embarrassment. Before they prepared to leave, I told him to drive carefully. He was enraged at this, interpreting it as my critic of him as a driver. Of course I will drive carefully, he answered, angry, but managed to stay restrained. Then they left the apartment, and I never met him again. After a while, my cousin broke up with him and went her own way. The rest of the relatives laid all the blame on her as an ungrateful, selfish, and lying person. It is not uncommon for people to provoke divided feelings, but when there are attitudes so opposed, must it be that we are missing something? The facts that we are not know. In further, during this monologue, I will refer to some celebrities, to what I know from my and the persons which I know from my personal or someone else experience, and of course to science, psychology and psychiatry above all. I will use multidisciplinary approach to explain this phenomenon. This kind of people always attract attention with certain qualities. These are often physical beauty, intelligence, or social status. Using their skill, they will do everything to make that quality as much as possible comes to the fore. Beautiful women will spend large sums of money on plastic surgery. Intelligent people boast of their diplomas and scientific works. Politicians will grab for different and more positions. Those who can do nothing else will pretend to struggle for the benefit of others more than their own. Such people will avoid any situation in which they are not in best shape or their qualities cannot come to the fore. Models will not leave the house when a pimple grows on their nose. Politicians will run away from journalists if they are not properly dressed. Generous donors will not grab for their wallet if there are not witnesses nearby. Not only will such people insist on their best impression, but everything else, what is human, usual, as premature boldness, going to a psychiatrist, or paying bills. That will be hidden and forbidden for the rest of the world, with good reason. Big people have to be big in small things, even when they are not. Everyone lies. Those who claim otherwise do not tell the truth. Most people lie for some special benefit, and lie only as much as necessary to make that happen. The reason is simple. It's easier to say the truth. In order for a lie to be convincing, it is necessary to invest a lot of mental work. The truth does not require any effort. However, there are people who are said to lie while their lips are moving, to deceive more people over a longer period of time in different situations. Great mental strength and ability are required. Narcissists are doomed to eternal lying just to keep other people next to them. They have no benefit from reality whatsoever. Reality is moreover very dangerous. That is why narcissists will, at any cost, restrict access to information to anyone over whom they have influence. Narcissists will try to seduce his victims with fantasies about fulfilling their desires, about money they will soon receive and what they will buy with it, about eternal life that awaits them, about power and force that will enable them to rule their own or others' lives, and so on. If fantasies don't help, there is punishment, exclusion from the organization, publishing information that can damage their reputation, rejection by narcissist, threat of losing invested money, and more. Control over information is an essential demand for a lie to prevail the truth. Well-structured lies are called ideology or dogmas that are necessary to put a larger group people under control. You will recognize narcissists by the constant lying and lack of critical thought by his or her victims. Everyone wants to be loved from people around them. Narcissists are after that question very liberal. People may love them, but they don't have to. They know that the love and affection of a large group of people is deceptive and over time it loses its intensity. That is why narcissist from the beginning has ace up in his sleeve. Fear is an equally strong glue, if not stronger. To overcome opponents from his ranks, narcissist must be stronger than them, all the time. From the very acquaintance, from the first sight and the conversation, narcissist looks for weak points on his victim, because he himself, from a very early age, is vulnerable and has one of his own faults. Narcissist easily smells blood. Even if he fails at the beginning, narcissist will somehow dig it up, listening carefully to their victims who see him as a friend, ally, or savior. Bill Cosby, well-known actor and author of the best family sitcom in America, brought different girls in the shootings, promising their affirmation and a career. They all ended up as victims of rape in an unconscious state. He could have some of those girls only if they asked them, but just the fact that he had them without their consent was what he really enjoyed. That power he had over them, that might to do them whatever he wished to do, intoxicated him, and he didn't worry about the consequences. What could they do to him? To sue him for something what was implied, and sue him, the great American dad, benefactor of black athletes, honorary doctor of science, pastor of young generations. Over time, narcissist becomes stronger and stronger, and his follower weaker and weaker. The fact that he or she is only one of the followers makes him or her even more insignificant in the eyes of the narcissist, but also in eyes of other people. Charles Taze Russell has founded International Bible Students and declared himself as a man who alone comprehended Holy Scriptures and God's purposes for mankind. Therefore, he was a man who is finally revealed secret of eternal life in happiness and prosperity. From the beginning, he was an opponent of the Holy Trinity, but only since 1882, when he handled Nelson Barber and his bystanders. Russell openly attacks all other Christian denominations. When he left alone, without a man in an organization who had the reputation and power to oppose him, Russell openly opposed his stance. When a narcissist gains great power, he expands it in large length and width on greater number of people and with greater intensity. Narcissist places ever greater demands on his followers. Keith Raniere founded Nexium with the goal of making optimal version of each individual and save civilization from collapse. Several tens of thousands of people attended his courses and paid millions of dollars for it. Inside Nexium, he made DOS, a narrow group of blindly loyal female followers whose duties were to belong to him at all times, to be available for sex, to keep a diet constantly and give him regularly collateral, a means of blackmail, anything that can make them publicly embarrassment and shame. From the cult of knowledge grew up a new cult of sex. Too much power means too many worries. Those worries must be shared with others. Like it or not, narcissist is forced to delegate, that is, to transfer part of accumulated power to others, privileged ones, which again carries risk of possible fight for the rest of power with greedy members of the pack. Charles Taze Russell had a wife, Maria Ackley, who was also versed in the Bible. She was a good helper to her husband in leading the religious community of Bible students. She was credited with introducing the function of faithful and discreet slave from Matthew 24 to 45 as supreme authority appointed by God. She wanted to take on a bigger role in organization, but Russell was strongly against it, especially since Maria was far more educated than him. Their marriage ended in court divorce with alimony for Maria Ackley. Everyone tries to use their qualities to the best of their ability. Some bake bread, some play football, and some paint. Everyone has a talent of affinity that leads him to a certain way of life. A special group of people, thanks to their quality, will try to make the self the center of the world for other people. Depending on external circumstances, depends how many people in their orbit will be. The centripetal force will be money or power. Let's start with money, as usual. We need two influential clients for a start. The banker will lend money with high interest, far higher than that which can be obtained in the market. With money of the second client, he will return the principal amount and interest to first client. Man who earns a large sum of money will brag to acquaintances from which new clients will emerge. From their contribution, he will pay off the second client. From two apostles will start invasion of eager people anxious for quick and easy earnings. As long as there are more of those who invest than those who withdraws their money, initiator of this pyramid scheme will be rich, successful, and respected businessman. And why not? Nobody knows how, but while the money is dripping, everything is fine. The problem is that the number of clients is limited, and sooner or later everything will fall. Some call it Ponzi scheme, better known in our country as Yugo-Skandic and Document Affair. It will always have the same end. Nexium is a project of Kit Raniere, a company founded for self-help based on the theory of neuro-linguistic programming, and whose mission was to achieve optimal development of each individual and raising civilization to the next, new, more human level. Nexium's clients were wealthier people, mostly from show business, who could afford courses, at price of several tens of thousands of dollars. Among clients, he has hired people for his private needs from low motives. That's how DOS came about. Something like a secret society or sorority made up exclusively of women, young girls, attractive and blindly loyal to organization, as evidenced with so-called collateral, various secrets whose disclosure would ruin their career and public reputation, would be degraded and destroyed. As final confirmation was stamping with initials of Kit Ranier. One of the basic duties was to have sex with their guru whenever he wanted it. Reward for that was advancing on scale of power in Nexium and personality development, which would be reflected on higher income and satisfaction with own life. When one of them finally spoke and showed the stamp on his pelvis, a self-proclaimed philosopher and scientist, a man with the highest IQ in the world and friend of Dalai Lama, became a sex offender and a fugitive from justice, who eventually received 120 years in prison. Charles Taze Russell created his own cult from scratch. He created a sect that later evolved into Jehovah's Witnesses. For those interested in history, essence, and doctrine of Jehovah's Witnesses, I strongly recommend to watch the video I have made on this topic. Link is below in the explanation. All his life, Russell studied the Bible and its interpretation, so he was a Presbyterian, a Congregationalist. He hung out with Millerites and finally founded his own organization, International Bible Students. He claimed for himself that he was the only man who has correctly understood the Bible in right way, what God ordered to us, and also said that if we stick to what good Pastor Russell interpreted as God's will, we will survive inevitable Armageddon and enjoy in paradise earth. For all others, certain death was sure. Requirements were strict, perhaps excessive, but reward was priceless. He died in 1916 after 2 incorrect prophecies of Judgment Day. He left tens of thousands of dollars and followers, of course, a pile of money, and lots of real estate from which his heirs will make a world religion with membership of millions. Not bad for someone with 7 grades of elementary school. Narcissists offer people something no one can give them in moment when they need it. In return, they will take everything which they can, regardless of fact that they can't or will not fulfill their part of bargain. Once again, I invite you to watch my video about Jehovah's Witnesses, where you can hear more detailed biography of Charles Taze Russell. From the early age of 12, he entered the world of adults as a business partner of his father, a widower in clothing store. 1 year later, he passes from Presbyterian to the Congregational church and yelling on the street quotes verses from the Bible, describing hellfire to coerce infidels to be baptized. At the age of 16, he experiences a crisis of faith, recognizing contradictions in Christianity. At 18 years, he meets Adventists and returns to the faith with conviction that the Bible is truly the Word of God. In 1879, after a failed collaboration with one of the Adventists, he founded his own magazine, Today's Watchtower, in which he presents his interpretation of the Bible. Although he had no intention to establish his own church, but to unite all those who seek truth in the Bible, Bible students are established with him at the head as a pastor. Using money obtained from the sale of its share in father business, he devotes himself entirely to religion by writing books, tracts, sermons, and magazine Watchtower, in which he predicts imminent rapture, righteous to heaven, and return of Jesus Christ. Several times he tries unsuccessfully to arrange a meeting between leaders of all Christian denominations. He speaks of himself as a spokesman of God without special visions or status, and claim that when he would not speaking, only stones would cry out. He had his own opinion about ancient architecture, speaking how measures and dimensions of the pyramids in Egypt indicate that they were built according to God's instructions, and predict the end of the world for 1914. He was also a politician, urging Jews not to convert to Christianity, but to move to Palestine, because in 1914 they will be again chosen people and the center of new world order. He was also a climatologist, saying that the world climates would change rapidly and soon reach the qualities of one in paradise. He had interfered in medicine, writing that appendicitis and typhoid fever occurs due to worms that settle in intestines and starts biting from inside. Due to various opinions and beliefs, he has often been criticized as charlatan and ignorant, to which he reacted with lawsuits. He managed the organization of Bible students in dictatorial way, cursing people who left him, including his own wife. She also sued him for cruelty and immoral behavior towards a foster daughter, so she got divorce and alimony. Many called him a fraud because he sold some bad wheat as a miraculous grain and advertised it over the pages of Watchtower magazine. He dies on his own frequent and long trips around the USA from a kidney cyst. Acquaintances said that his body was at 64 years old was more worn out than the body of his late father at 89. As a legacy, his publications remained in a huge circulation. Even one 8-hour movie film and big capital in money, stocks, real estates, and farms. Characteristic for Russell were these grandiose ideas about himself as the only man who understood the Bible in the right way, revealed hidden messages of God, published them to the public, and became his God's spokesman. Those ideas arise early in childhood and cause his lack of interest in school, so his education stops in the 7th grade of elementary school. He will compensate his chronic ignorance with ease by accepting all sorts of charlatan theories, such as pyramidology and phrenology, for example. Any criticism made in public was considered a severe attack and was often went on trials with his opponents. He did not want to give up even a part of his absolute power that he derived from monopoly in knowledge of God's intentions. That is why all affairs related to management of organization performed only by himself. That meant frequent and tedious travel all over America. All his money and money donated to Bible students, he spent it to promote himself and his own beliefs. Despite strong efforts to continue existence of international Bible students after him, adhering to his doctrine, his publishing house and followers are hijacked by his lawyer, Joseph Franklin Rutherford, and steer them in a completely different direction. He was most famous stand-up comedian in history. You should only mention Cosby Show, and everyone knows who it is. Character of Dr. Huxtable, who through decent humor describes a life of fictional, wealthy Afro-American family, has become his alter ego that will collapse towards the end of his life. As a young man, he led a dynamic life, playing in various sports and attending correspondence courses up to honorary doctorate in the field of education, thanks to his real profession. Since the beginning of the 60s, he has been performing in pubs, making guests laugh, after which he gets on TV and then in movies. He will earn large sums of money and donate it to various, mostly colored people societies. The awards will start pouring in from all sides, thanks to the fame in show business, but also to previously mentioned donations. He was given the opportunity to express his political views and hardly criticize his own Afro-American community. All that will change after 2005 and Andrea Constant's rape with use of drugs. Skeletons will begin to fall out from his closet. About 60 women with a similar story will respond. Modus operandi of serial rapists will be revealed. Cosby built character of good, moral, pure, and justified doctor who likes to teach lessons of well manner, but also in acting, to everyone who comes in contact with him. Only people from his close professional environment knew for his outbursts of rage and revengefulness. Bunch of young girls will come to shooting, hoping for mentorship and first acting role. Cosby establishes a relationship with them and introduces them to colleagues who are convinced that Cosby used them for bad activities with mutual consent. After a while, Cosby calls them somewhere for a drink to talk about their future careers. After drinking and fainting, they wake up naked with torn underclothes and hangover. In addition, they receive a threat with expensive court process if they complain to someone. It lasted more than 40 years, and it was revealed thanks to audacity and conceitedness of Cosby and his desire to rape Andrea Constant, coach of basketball team he sponsored. In addition to being former athlete, Andrea was also explicit lesbian. The trial was closed to public and ended up with agreement between two sides that trial files remain sealed. In 2014, in recorded stand-up event, his black fellow comedian Hannibal Buress accuses him of raping women in response to sermons that Cosby continues to give his own community. Like a fire, viral footage is spreading on social media, and for the first time, media beginning to investigate. Cosby denies everything, but court decides to unseal trial files, and public finds out that Cosby offers each of the girls quaaludes, sedative pills, before having sex with them. All institutions which showered Cosby with awards and honors are severing ties and withdraws almost all awards. In April 2018, Cosby is convicted for aggravated indecent assault from 3 to 10 years in prison due to obsolescence of other rape cases. This year, Pennsylvania Supreme Court approved the appeal against the verdict, so final outcome of this procedure remains to be seen. Bill Cosby became a big name in show business back in the 60s, and he could have sex with many women, even though he didn't need to, because he had already five children with his wife. He was rich, he was famous, an athlete, very respectable and therefore attractive male. He could find mistress, and he could afford himself sex with most expensive prostitutes. But he was not interested. He craved for power, supremacy, omnipotence, to do his victims whatever he wanted, without asking for consent. He used a false, idealized image which he created of himself to shut the mouth of anyone who knew anything bad about him. Over time, this image gradually faded, especially for younger generation. However, in my opinion, a drop that spilled over the glass was his wrong choice of victim. For her, it was unacceptable and unbearable, just as it would be for Cosby if he would been raped for an inmate in prison. First thing I did when I heard about the sex cult scandal in Nexium was that I watched YouTube interview with Kit Raniere, who was led by his student and sex slave Alison Mack. I saw a middle-aged man whose appearance resembles nerd and his sentences to philosopher. It was cranking about authenticity and creativity, ramble of what is and what is not. He had his own special language, invented by himself. For instance, a person cannot be authentic if it is not authentic to himself. The point is that no one got it, but it didn't bother Alison Mack, who was looking at her own guru like a dog in his master. It was just like during their first meeting, which was filmed too, when she looked worried at first, then for a moment she cried, then she laughed, and finally returned to normal nervous state. And Ranier was the same. He talked to her for a few minutes during break from volleyball game he played recreationally with his followers. Instead of joking or encouraging her, giving her a compliment, or flirting with her a little bit, he was the same all the time. He said phrases without any concrete conclusion, with same expressionless face and eyes without shine. Some call it fish eyes.
So we can walk down the street and have had an experience, as I have, with a rattlesnake, stepping on a rattlesnake, almost getting bitten, walking down the street one summer day, stepping and hearing the rattlesnake at my feet.
Enigmatic, occasionally quoting Schopenhauer, he was just what Chloe from TV series Smallville needed, which was important role for this poorly educated and suggestible actress. He was also fond for a bunch of other women like her. Kit Ranier was born in 1960 in New York, where he spent his entire life. He graduated on Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute with very poor average grades, despite alleged high intelligence towards unofficial megatests. Young Ranier dreamed of other things, which he found in work of Isaac Asimov, the Second Foundation, where a scientist, knowing that his galaxy is heading for imminent doom, decides to reduce human behavior to simple mathematical equation. He was employed by Amway, a multi-level marketing firm, and after learning craft, he founded his own MLM company by the name Consumer Byline Incorporated, which collapses after a lawsuit by the state of New York over a pyramid scheme. He accepts a settlement for a $40,000 fine and a work ban in similar companies that will force him to change his approach to business. He's trying to sell vitamins with National Health Network, but even that, probably due to bad grades in mathematics, is falling. Meeting with Nancy Saltzman, a psychiatric nurse who practicing hypnosis, will be crucial for the rest of his, but also for her life too. Using his knowledge and occupation for Scientology, neuro-linguistic programming, and psychology, will design executive success program, project for personal development of managers and other officials, later called Nexium. Curriculum and theoretical basis will do Kit as vanguard, and practical work on seminars and workshops, Nancy as prefect. Titles named after characters from video games. He managed to attract rich hires of Canadian alcohol tycoon sisters Sarah and Claire Bronfman, who will invest about $150 million in Nexium. Business will branch out and expand. What he failed in business, he will succeed in education, where mathematics does not play an important role. First suspicion about Nexium emerged in 2003 with cover page in Forbes magazine titled "The World's Strangest Executive Coach." Accompanying article "Cult of Personality", which reveals details about biography of Kit Raniere, strange rules at seminars, titles within Nexium, and so on. Raniere spent big money on its propaganda. In 2009, he will buy endorsement of Dalai Lama for $2 million and sex Sarah Brofman with his secretary. Same year, 9 of his associates will turn their backs on him and accuse him for immorality behavior and abuse of his status for exploitation of women in organization in sexual purposes. Among them is his partner Barbara Boucher, to whom he told, quote, "Some people killed for his and their beliefs," end of quote. His next partner, Christine Keefe, runs away from him in 2014 with their son Galen, accusing him of being dangerous and hiring men to obtain personal data of 6 federal judges, 1 American senator, journalist, and newspaper publisher. In 2017, New York Times publishes an article on existence of secret sorority within Nexium and branding a sign of affiliation. Together with a narrow circle of followers, he fled to Mexico, where he was caught in a luxury apartment villa as his hideout with daughter of Nancy Saltzman, Lorraine, interfering pre-scheduled orgies. However, what really came to Raniere's head were 15-year-old girls, obsession with young teenagers who are easily seduced and exploited, suggest that he enjoys their awe and uncritical acceptance of his demands. Daniela was a 15-year-old Mexican who was lured in New York by offering a computer program course and job under personal patronage of then 43 years old Raniere. Instead, she ended up as an illegal immigrant and worker at Nexium and sex slave of Kit Raniere. When she fell in love with some guy Ben and told him that she wouldn't sleep with him anymore, Raniere ordered her to spend 2 years in solitary confinement in a room just with one mattress and with a pile of paper to write an apology and ask for forgiveness. After Daniela, her 2 underage sisters arrived from Mexico and experienced the same fate. Younger Camila and older Mariana, who will give a birth to Raniere's second son. He was sentenced to 120 years in prison last year for trafficking, possession of child pornography, forced labor, and theft of personal data. Kit Raniere's talent was that he knew carefully to listen to other people. He was able to sense their problem, to sense their weakness, and suggest that he knows solution to their problem. But he can't tell them immediately because they wouldn't understand. That's how he would provide their companionship in future. In time, when he gains their trust, he will use it as a weapon against them. He will constantly humiliate them, speak how they do not understand, that they do not progress and that they are stupid and punish them. He will force them to work against themselves, to get involved in crime and in immorality, constantly waving the solution to the original problem. Followers will desperately seeking for solution of one and making themselves other problems equally unsolvable. Ranier thought and still thinks he is genius who discovered secret of great power, that human civilization will fail, and that he figured out how to save it. And he said it deadly cold, without any excitement. He really had a vision of some different, better, ideal world, but only for himself, imposing on all others simple mathematical formulas or patterns of behavior which he alone invented.
So are humans completely programmable, predictable, at least right now by human expression and thinking? No, we can't explain ourselves like machines. We can't write the equations of our behavior yet.
We will first address some competent issues. Occurrence of narcissistic personality disorder amounts to 6.2% of total population, with higher frequency among men than among women. According to the 10th revision of the International Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems, ICD-10, narcissism belongs to the set F60, specific personality disorders, subset F60.8, other marked personality disorders. According to Manual for Diagnosis of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, to diagnose narcissistic personality disorder, 5 of following 9 criteria must be met. First, a grand sense of self-importance. Second, preoccupation with fantasies about unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Third, the belief that he or she is special and unique, and that only those like him can understand him. Fourth, need for excessive admiration. Fifth, sense of entitlement, that they are privileged by default. 6. Exploitation of others. 7. Lack of empathy. 8. Envy of others or belief that others envious of him or her. And 9. Arrogance in behavior and attitudes. Any score below 5 falls into narcissistic personality syndrome or narcissistic personality traits. It is someone who looks like narcissist, someone who imitates him, but he is not. In other words, if someone is an asshole, it doesn't mean he is a narcissist, but every narcissist is by default an asshole. It can be said that narcissism is condition more than disease, because it represents a person who is not fully formed and which builds into its identity on approval of others and mostly has false image of himself. According to the way they seeking for approval and attention, there are 2 types. 1. Overt or grandiose type, open type, and covert, hidden, vulnerable narcissist. The grandiose type of narcissist chases and convinces people how good, smart, successful, rich, perfect he or she is. Covert narcissist is shy, aloof, nice, cultured, and doesn't look like narcissist at all. His real nature will show much more later, when he is sure he will not be rejected. Narcissist will never voluntarily ask for treatment or admit that he is possibly mentally ill because he believes he is perfect. Problem will always switch to someone else. In addition, as they strive for acceptance from their environment, they will take care of their image in public and how much his environment respects him. Actually, this perfect, sinless image of an individual is a sign of warning or red flag. Treatment is extremely complex, if it is possible at all. And it is considered as a success if person becomes aware of his condition and manages to control it, which will allow him to integrate into society and achieving healthy interpersonal relationships. How to recognize a narcissist? If he is not wearing a t-shirt with the inscription "I'm a narcissist" or does not answer yes to a direct question, then there is no way. More data and more observations are needed for this conclusion. When there are very divided opinions about someone between his closest relatives, inmates, family members, colleagues from work, and outside world, neighbors, superiors or subordinates at work, and general public at all, it's an almost certain sign of strange person. Narcissists live to be popular, loved, adored by as many people as possible. They will spend the last cent, change their appearance, suffer serious strikes. They will do the impossible. They can be very interesting, witty, seductive, even overly convincing. With them, time just flies. Everything is easy. Everything can be solved quickly and easily. In words, of course. More successful of them will act charismatically, like people you should follow. It is difficult to refuse or ignore such generous and talented people, but they can't hide their true nature for long, especially not from people with whom they spend long time together. The conflict with narcissists begins around very small things, and reasonable man thinks this can be overcome. He is ready to turn blind eye, hoping it was only temporary. A narcissist will do the same. However, narcissist will not stop or give up of his attitude, opinion, or request. Victim can choose between immediate surrender or gradually retreat. Narcissists live in their own world, in which they are perfect, ideal, and infallible. All others are neither personalities but things to which they claim every possible right. This is especially true for those who are in some relationship with narcissists, as family members, employees, members of organization that narcissist manages, etc. In such relationship, there is only one will, one brain, and one point of view. and that is narcissistic. And he will not regret money, effort, time, and sometimes even blood to do so be forever. In relation to narcissist, his follower or victim every day loses more and more. A narcissist grows stronger by plundering and stealing resources from everyone who is attached to him. Other people's money, labor, skills are prey of every narcissist, and he steals them by declaring all of these for common property, like means to achieve a sacred goal, and then take over a right to use that same mutual or third-party property. A typical example is drunken husband who spends all his family savings. Head of state will abuse entire state apparatus to destroy his political rivals. Owner of pyramid scheme, when realize that he owed too much to his depositors, run away with the rest of the money in unknown direction. Anyone who opposes them will be spied on, intimidated, smeared, blackmailed, beaten, and sometimes even killed. Each rebel will fight with the rest of his strength against narcissist and all other cowards who are on his side. He will be a traitor and he will be alone. Narcissist has no mercy for traitor. When it comes to the dyad, a direct personal relationship with the narcissist who is family member or spouse, things can be worse. There are emotions, sense of duty, memory of past love, ethical issues that are an essential part of every human being. Narcissist doesn't worry about that because he is more immoral and consider people as personal property, immovable property. And who has ever heard that property can voluntarily leave its owner? Only positive outcome is leaving relationship with narcissist. That is why you need not only courage to get out of relationship with narcissist, but ready-made strategy also, because it really looks like game of chess in which one has to sacrifice some figure in order to win a game at the same end. This concludes this not so pleasant story of narcissism. For any additional questions, help and advice on how to terminate links to narcissist, I leave an email address down below. Thank you for your attention and I hope it was useful to you.